Hey Paradise people, I'm Bella Rooney and welcome back to another episode of Protecting Paradise. Today we are chatting about sharks and the deep sea with the DOE's Shark Project Officer and Heriot-Watt University PhD student Johanna Kohler. There is no one I know more crazy about sharks than her. Johanna has been working with the DOE assessing shark abundance and behaviour here in the Cayman Islands. She's also been involved with the DOE's Beneath the Waves and Marine Conservation International's deep sea research currently being conducted off our shores. I can't wait for you to hear more all about this, so let's dive on in. So excited for this episode. I'm so excited. We're here with Johanna and we're going to talk a little bit about, well, not a little bit, a lot about her shark research. Hi, Johanna. How are you today?
Hi, Bella. I'm very excited too. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so let's start with getting a little bit, getting a bit more information about you. So tell us about yourself. What makes you so passionate about sharks and passionate about the research you've been conducting?
Yes, of course. So I'm from Germany and I grew up in Germany. And actually, I was afraid of fish when I grew up. Of all things, yes, I was. I was very much afraid of fish and I wouldn't jump into any rivers or lakes or anything because there were fish in there and they could bite me. And so I was like, not even swimming there. Yeah, unless my brother was with me and would scare the fish away.
Back up, yeah.
But then I finished high school and I went to Australia for a gap year.
Wow.
And I learned how to dive there, which was the plan from the beginning. But I checked out the diving center before then to snorkel, and I met 2 bull sharks on my snorkel with the diving center. I know, and I was shocked at the beginning when I saw them because they were bigger than me. Yeah. 2 bull sharks. I didn't know there were bull sharks at the time. I just knew 2 big sharks that were bigger than me. And I was like, oh my God, 2 sharks. And then they were so gracious and they were just doing their thing, cruising around under me and then went away. And I'm like, I just survived 2 sharks. And from that point on, it was like I was just taken by it. Like I obviously then learning how to swim or like how to dive in Australia. I encountered sharks on every single dive. From there on, I went to South Africa to work on a cage diving boat with white sharks. And there then I decided to study marine biology at University of Cape Town there. Just because the marine biology center is there really good and the chances of working with sharks was higher there than in Germany. So yeah, I just fell in love, I guess, first of all with their nature, but also then learning more about them. They are just amazing creatures. Like they have evolved to perfection years ago, or millions of years ago, and since then never changed again. Yeah. So they're quite ancient in evolution, but also perfect, like predators.
Yeah.
And they have just little things about them, like for example, they don't have swim bladders. They have to keep swimming. Then they are fish. So other fish have swim bladders to keep their balance in the ocean, and sharks don't. So they have an oily liver to give a little bit of an uplift, but they kind of have to keep swimming, which makes them different. They also have electroreception that not other fish have. Then they can replace their teeth. And actually their skin is made out of little teeth, which is like, yeah, the more you learn about them, the more fascinating they become. I'm super interested in reproduction, for example. So sharks are, female sharks, I'd love to be a female shark, to be honest, because what they can do is amazing. So first of all, she can decide when she wants to get pregnant. So when she mates with a male, she can keep the sperm in her uterus alive for a while in case her body condition isn't right or the environmental conditions aren't right. So she can say, okay, hang on a minute, I'm not ready, or it's just not great to get pregnant right now, but maybe in a month or 2, and she can keep that sperm and then decides to get pregnant. Then if she meets somebody else in that time who is a better fit, she can reject that first sperm and get pregnant with that second
Oh.
male's sperm.
Wow.
How cool is that?
That is
I mean, she's so in charge of like
Seriously.
contraception and like everything. So the last thing is, but not every shark species can do that. They can clone themselves. So if she doesn't encounter a male in a while, because the ocean is fast, and that's why they usually do mate when they are in mating season, and they
Right.
do meet another shark, because you never know when you encounter another one again. So
Right,
just for
right.
species reproduction and evolutionary purposes, you do want to mate. But if she doesn't encounter one, like the fast pelagic species, like oceanic white tips, whale sharks or whatever, when they travel for a long time, they may not encounter one. And they then can decide, okay, I want to make sure that my species survives when I
course.
die, just in case I die. So they then can clone themselves. She can only reproduce females because she is a female, and she would need the male
Yeah.
sperm or like genes to reproduce a male. But either way, I mean, just those three options that she has as a female shark, I'm like, oh my God.
Wouldn't we love that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Day
just
and
taken
age.
by it. So yeah, I mean, sharks are very cool.
Okay, well, that's a massive reason to be passionate. Oh my gosh, what an interesting beast. Oh, that's just crazy. Okay,
I know,
well,
mind blowing.
we could talk about that like for the next 50 billion years, honestly. So let's get a little bit about why shark populations are actually so important here, and why are they important to our marine environment in Cayman?
Well, sharks are top predators, and as a top predator, they keep their prey population in check. And usually exert a force top down throughout the entire food web and the ecosystem. So sharks do keep their prey populations in check by eating the sick and the weak, but also if the prey population becomes too much, too abundant, they will make sure that the prey population is in a healthy size to not throw off the balance on the reef. For example, in other places where predators or sharks have been removed, you will see consequences throughout the entire ecosystem. For example, their prey population would be fish like jacks and barracudas, groupers. They expand in size, and then what do they eat? They eat like the herbivores, like parrotfish. So they will put a lot of pressure on the parrotfish, which diminishes their population. And if we have less parrotfish, then they will eat less algae off the reef, and that means the algae then expands over our reef and explodes kinda and smothers our coral, and that's not what we want. So potentially the removal or even decrease of predator populations can have a trickle-down effect throughout the entire ecosystem. So they help keep the balance on the reef and in our oceans.
That's such a tricky balance, isn't it?
It is.
And you don't even realize it when you're swimming in the ocean. You don't even realize that every little fish has a part to play in keeping it balanced and giving the resources to us, and that they're all really connected that way.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I've always loved, because those are called trophic levels, right?
Yes, that's
yeah.
right.
So I've always been so interested in trophic levels, and sharks, I just think, I don't know, they're just the coolest part of the trophic level to me. Okay, cool. So your research. What exactly were you researching? What were you researching, and what kind of conclusions did you come to? Because you've been researching for your PhD, right?
That's correct. So I have looked at, or let's start at the beginning. In 2009, the shark research has started with the Department of Environment and Marine Conservation International, which is a Scottish NGO. And before then, there was no organized shark research in Cayman, but with more awareness and sharks becoming priority globally because diminishing population, some of them are threatened, up to 90% of shark species are in some kind of way endangered. Cayman didn't really know what the status of our sharks are, what the populations are, like not really anything, but single shark sightings from the public or fishermen and stuff. So we have decided to actually, do a ground study, like groundbreaking baseline study in terms of what we have here and their abundance and so on and the behavior. So we started the shark research together with various methods, and the aim was to find out like the species composition, their abundance, whether they have any specific behavior throughout the year, like seasonal behavior, whether they swim between the 3 islands, because none of that was known before.
And that has an impact on... What does that have an impact on all those different variables?
Well, first of all, again, the better you understand the species, the better you understand the ecosystem, and then how potentially changes to the ecosystem through humans, for example, can influence that. So by understanding the biology and the behavior of sharks, we can better protect them, or if we see any like threats or like overlap between their behavior and our human behavior, we can mitigate those clashes, for example. So we know, for example, that we have about 6 to 8 coastal shark species, with the last 2 are like very random, like whale sharks now and then, or a silky shark showing up. But the most abundant are Caribbean reef and nurse shark, and we also found out that the hammerheads are here all year round, because when I came in 2016, I joined the project in 2016, but I have used the entire data set from 2009 for my PhD, so it's 10 years of data that I wrote up. And when I came in 2016, everyone was like, yeah, we have a hammerhead season. They're coming in May, June to pup here and to mate. But then we started with the Shark Logger Network, which is a scuba diving network where the divers are logging their dives for us, not just the shark sightings, but also the dives that don't see sharks, which gives us an effort. And we need that in terms of then like finding out whether... like where the sharks are and how often and so on. And through that, we found out that hammerheads are seen all year round. And that was really, really cool. Nobody has known that before. So we actually have more than we think we have. Although they are still very, like, not that common. I'm not going to say you got to see a hammerhead every time you jump into the ocean now, but they are more common than we thought, like, especially with the seasonality. Then we also have seen quite a few young on our surveys, like on the Bruffs, for example, a lot of juvenile and young of year. Young of year, we call sharks that are born within that year. And some of them, another cool fact, sharks have belly buttons, at least ours, yes. So there are 3 productive strategies in sharks, and some lay eggs, like a chicken, for example, and some have eggs inside the uterus, but they're kind of protected, like the eggshell would be then the shark mother. But then some of them give live birth, like we humans do with a placenta and everything. And obviously, if you have a placenta, you have an umbilical cord, and if you have an umbilical cord, you have a belly button. Yes, I know, it's so cool. So when you see a baby shark and it has a little slit between the pectoral fins, which are the front fins, on the chest, for the first like 2 to 3 months after it was born, it has that little slit, which is the belly button, and then it will close up because they have quite impressive self-healing powers. But so you won't see it after 3 months anymore, but they do. So on our surveys, we sometimes see the belly button on the Bruff. So even when we catch them for our tagging program. This suggests though that we have breeding populations, which means the sharks are resident. So Caribbean reef and nurse sharks are resident all year round, and they're breeding populations, which is great. Then we also have found some seasonal behavior, so they're more active during summer, less active during winter, and they also travel long distances to the sister islands, for example, but only by the mature sharks. So the little sharks, they usually stay close to the reef because they're more vulnerable in terms of predators and then, other sharks or other bigger predators in the ocean. And the mature sharks, they're a little bit more dominant and bold. They travel between the 3 islands, which makes them also more vulnerable because they're in open ocean, more subject to fishing activities or other predators. And then we also found out the various habitats. So each species has their favorite habitat and their favorite depth. And they have as reef sharks, that's typical for them. They have usually small home ranges within 10 kilometers, 10, 20 kilometers range, and they also have high site fatality, which means they prefer, like each shark prefers a specific area, but that doesn't mean all the Caribbean reef sharks are now in one specific area. It's more like individuals have their specific area where they like it, and then that's their home for a while. It may shift over time. We have a nurse shark that started out close to the Kitty Wake, and then it went around slowly throughout Northwest Point, and at the moment it's close to Rum Point. So over time, its home range or its site fidelity has changed. The area has changed, but it still hangs out then now around that area at Rum Point for a little bit.
That's so cool.
Yeah, okay. And the other thing is through that studying of the behavior and so on, we could identify some threats to our sharks.
Okay.
So, for example, sharks are quite shy, actually, despite popular belief. They do tend to avoid human disturbances like coastal development or any boat traffic, divers in the water. So along the west coast, we have less sharks, which means they just avoid that or go deep because we do have noticed that they go deep, or that just tend to hang around the other parts of the area where there's also more prey. Like on the north coast, we have a lot of current, not a lot of nutrients, a lot of fish. So obviously that's where the predators hang out. The same on the east, and the same pattern you can see on the sister islands. So Little Cayman has more because there's less human disturbance, and the reef are healthier, so there is more prey availability. Same on the Bragg. And we have seen also that, for example, even when the sharks go deep to escape the human disturbance on the reef or on the upper part of the reef, they may still get exposed to then deep sea fishing because we have the deep sea snapper fishing, grouper fishing, and so on. And unfortunately, because the fishermen also target these areas where there is high prey abundance, like the north coast or the east side of Grand Cayman, then that would obviously clash with our sharks because they also prey. They also like those areas because of the same reasons as the fishermen do. Exactly. So we could identify some threats, and then we can put those into action plans and conservation plans.
Oh, cool.
That's how it works.
Okay, oh my goodness.
That's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information, but I mean, I didn't know half of it, so I'm really happy that you've told us about that. Okay, cool. Oh, okay. Well, I guess what can the public do if we have people here love to fish. People here have always loved to fish, right? That's a part of the culture.
Yeah.
So what can the public do to help keep our shark populations healthy? Because I'm sure lots of people, after hearing this, will be really intrigued and want to help you guys out in, making sure we keep them around. So what can they do if they can do anything?
That's right. And honestly, everyone has to do their part in terms of protecting our environment, not just sharks in general. So for sharks, it's the same thing as for all of our wildlife. We need the help of the public to have a positive outcome, conservation outcome. So first of all sharks are protected within Cayman waters by law, so it is illegal to kill or fish for sharks, target sharks, harass them, take anything. They are protected species in Cayman. So that means I understand that none of the fishing gear is selective. You can't say, okay, I'm going to catch a grouper so-and-so big today. That's not happening. So it could always be that a shark will end up on a fishing hook, especially because there is a struggling fish on the line. A shark is a predator. It will go for a struggling fish because it thinks it's injured or something, which it is essentially because it has a hook in the mouth. But so if you do catch accidentally a shark, please release it by either cutting the line as close as possible to the hook as you're comfortable with, or even if you're more comfortable to remove the hook and let the shark go. Then also don't harass them, don't feed them, also very important. It's also illegal to feed sharks. We don't want them that they associate food with humans. Then also be mindful when you fish in the shallow areas, mangroves. In a mangrove forest, they are a nursery habitat for free fish, including baby sharks.
Yeah.
So we don't want the babies to be accidentally fished out. If you do see sharks, let us know. You can report them to us, and we keep a database of all the shark sightings. Then you could also do, if you're a frequent diver, you could join the Shark Logger Network, which is a little bit more involved. You could log all your shark sightings, like I said earlier, and that data is really, really helpful to us, because with our surveys, we can't go out every single day. We only can do, which is normal in science, in ecology, you can only do snapshot surveys and then do that consistently throughout over the years, and then have an index whether it goes up and down. So that's how science works. But with our Shark Logger Network, we have divers go out every single day, so they can survey throughout the year, and then we get a better pattern. More data is always a good thing. So if you are interested in that, reach out to us and sign up. Then you could also report any ongoing crimes if you see anything. Let us, the conservation officers, know. If you see any suspicious behavior, also report it to our conservation officers. They respond immediately. And we don't really have this here in Cayman, like we don't sell sharks here because they are protected. But if you travel and go overseas, just don't buy any shark products. Also have a look out in your cosmetics. The sharks have the oil in the liver, as I said earlier. It's called squalene. And some of those are, well, back in the day, that was used for, like candles and stuff like that.
Oh, I didn't know
or
that.
Even lipstick. Like with the whales, like the whale blubber was also
blubber.
used like that. And then once the whales were protected and everyone was out crying for the whales, then they used the sharks because nobody cared about them, right? So, and it's still in some cosmetics, squalene, but they also make now a synthetic squalene, which is called squalane. And it's just, I know, it's just to make it more confusing. There's like one letter difference, but it's making a big difference for the sharks. If you ever have just have a look.
No, yeah, be aware of that.
If you're aware, exactly. And just don't buy any shark products like the jaws, the teeth, the skin, or sometimes they have baby sharks in jaws. I've seen already, overseas. No. Yeah, really awful things. Or in some Caribbean, but also overseas in Europe and in Australia, they sell shark meat for fish and chips, for example, in Australia and Europe. I know that fish and chips is shark.
What?
I know, in Germany too. I know, my mom always used to say that when I grew up. She's like, no, we're not eating fish and chips because there are sharks in there. And obviously in Caribbean culture, we have our fish and bake, which is shark and bake, right?
Yeah.
So just avoid that too, because this is all, like, the customers, as usual, in the power to drive the market, and if there's no demand, then the restaurants will stop selling it, then that means they won't buy it from the fishermen, and then the fishermen don't have a reason to catch them. So you can make a difference.
You definitely can make a difference. Wow. Okay, there's no reason to not make a difference.
That's the enforcement number.
Yeah, so if you want to call in to our enforcement chief officer, then call 916-4271. That's 916-4271.
Okay, and that's for if you see anything suspicious going on. Okay, cool.
Or anyone catching a shark or something
that's
like that.
Brilliant. Okay. That's so exciting. People can do stuff. Okay, so let's switch it up a little bit here. So I met you and a couple other people just through a mutual friend, and I heard a little bit about some deep sea research that was going on, and that made me super excited because I think the deep sea is such a wonderful, magical, majestic place. And obviously we have the Cayman Trench here, which is the third deepest, right? I think so, third deepest. So with deep sea mining, it's becoming a bigger reality. The need for resources, not from land, and stop, mining land, but moving to the sea, and could be a really massive problem. So, could you tell us a little bit about the work that's being undertaken by Beneath the Waves and DOE and the motivation behind this deep sea research?
Yes, of course I can. Thank you. I'm happy to. So this new project is really exciting because I agree with you. It's a super interesting place, the deep sea, and also it's mystical. Like it's very dark there. It's hard to reach. So not many people have looked there, right? So yes, the DOE, it's a project from the DOE, Marine Conservation International, Beneath the Waves, which are both NGOs, one from Scotland, one from the US, and Heriot-Watt University in Scotland as well.
Cool.
And this whole project is funded by a Darwin Plus grant and the White Tip Fund from UK Brew as our ongoing main sponsor of the shark research here. So why we are doing it? We have been now monitoring the shark population over 10 years, as I just said, which was part of my PhD. And we have a relative good understanding of the ecology in our coastal waters now, but we never surveyed past those 100 feet or 30 meters because it is very difficult to get there. The equipment is more expensive, harder to get, like it's just more logistically difficult, challenging. And that's also why there's only limited information available from the very deep environment. And we have a few sighting records of deep sea sharks, but not really organized shark research at all. So, but this means also the protection and the management of these species is not specifically addressed in Cayman yet.
Right.
And so what we want to do is assess the occurrence and the distribution of the predators, such as sharks, but also commercial fish, such as the groupers and snappers, and assess the makeup of the seabed, as well as record any presence of corals, sponges, invertebrates, and some of the water quality down there. So this would then cover from 50 to 2,000 meters, which is 150 feet to 6,000 feet. I know.
That's
6,000 feet.
A lot of space.
Which is it's so deep. I can hardly wrap my head around it because usually as a diver you don't go past 100, and then even if you tech diving you may go to like 300 feet.
Even then.
But I know, but in the end, like when you think about the ocean, it's such a fast environment, and those like 200, I don't know, 100 feet, that's just like literally like a sliver on top of like
the actual depth.
The actual depth of the ocean. So I'm very excited to go really, really deep and see what's down there.
Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's looking at kind of maybe the biodiversity with all that. So what do you use to assess this stuff? Well, I mean, I've heard of BRUVs, and I know the DOE did a post about some of the equipment, but what exactly, what are BRUVs? What do they stand for?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? So BRUVs are baited remote underwater video systems, which means it's essentially a camera trap like those on land. So you have a camera, we use GoPros, and then you have a bait arm with bait attached. Bait is contained, so we're not feeding any animals, but it has holes so the scent goes out. So it creates a plume around the unit, which means all the predators are then attracted to the scent and will come check out the unit to find where the food is. But they won't get it, you know what I mean? So they come really close to the camera and we then record it. And then when we bring the unit back up, we can then analyze the footage. So we have those deep water BRUVs. Usually we have those for the coastal work that we've done on the shallow stuff too. But now we have deep water BRUVs, which means they can endure the pressure and the duration of like those depths. Those are deployed via boat and rope. Up to 160 drops now we're doing, and each drop has 2 hours of footage. Yeah, it's a lot of
footage.
It's a lot of hours, yes, that I have to watch. Then the other thing is we have seabed landers. Those are also BRUVs. Also a camera, it has a battery attached to it and acoustic release, which means we can drop them really, really deep. So those ones that go then to 2,000 meters, 600 feet, which are 80 drops for 7 hours. So we drop them. Wow. We leave them for 6 hours or something, and then we acoustically release them. So we have a button on the boat, we press it, and then under the water it will release the unit, and then it comes up with a float, and then we pick it up on the surface. It's really, really cool.
Oh, I see.
It's really,
so then it
really
floats
cool.
Back up.
Yes, and because we can't go down there, and we don't have a line which is that long, so it needs to be dropped. It sinks to the bottom with a weight, and then after 7 hours we can acoustically release it. So the signal is via acoustics.
Okay, yeah.
And then it comes up again, and then we also have that to watch that footage.
Yeah, so is there a light on it?
Yes, we do have lights, because even on our shallower ones, which are like 600 feet, it's dark there.
Of course.
You don't see anything. So we have lights attached to it. And the light, and it's so dark down there that the light only reaches really to the bait, which is like a meter, 3 foot in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's hardly anything. Like, it really sucks up like the light.
Is that a bright white light, or do you use a special color?
No, it is a bright white light. But with diving, those for listeners that dive, they know that the brighter you go, that it's not usually better, because then you pick up all the particles and they reflect back.
Right. Okay.
Depending on how the visibility or how many particles there are in the water. So you need to find like a sweet spot in between, bright enough that you can see, but not too bright, so everything comes back to you and you don't see anything, because then the depth goes.
Nothing can be easy.
No, of course not with marine biology. That's like the theme. And then for the last part, the water quality, or actually also for sharks, there has been a new method developed in the recent years, which is really, really interesting. It's called eDNA, which means environmental DNA. So what you do is you collect water samples and then send it off to a lab, and they can find out whether there have been sharks in the water.
Just by testing?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The particles in the water, because obviously every animal releases some kind of DNA, so those labs are so sensitive that they can pick up whether a shark has been there or like pooped or something, you know.
My God.
Essentially. That's what they
tool.
I know, because this way, even if the shark is not there on our camera, we can still find out what kind of species composition is down there. And especially in those depths, I mean, it's really hard to survey. So that's another tool that we use. And it also, because we do collect water samples, we can also then check for water quality purposes. So that's that's the methods that we use.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so if people like the sound of that, then you should get into marine biology. That sounds so technical for me, but how cool, how wonderful to have access to equipment that allows you to study stuff like that. Okay, so have you been looking over any footage? Do you have anything backed? Have you seen anything on your cameras yet, or not yet?
I have had a look at it already.
Yeah.
So the deep one, we have only had 4 drops so far, and unfortunately we didn't find any sharks. I was really hoping for the 7 gills, the brown-nosed 7 gills, those huge ones, or even dogfish. I love dogfish. I did my undergrad on dogfish. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're really, really cute, I think. They're tiny little sharks, but they're like, still a shark. So, no, we haven't seen any of those, but I'm hoping to find them one day. But we did find some shrimp.
Oh, that's
and
good.
they're bright orange in the light, obviously. They're bright orange, and they loved our bait, I gotta say. They were on there for the entire 5 hours or something,
wow,
and destroyed it. But other than that, it was still really interesting to see, but no sharks. Then on the shallower ones, we found some Caribbean reef down at they go down. I think they went to 300.
That's
not at 600, but at 300, and that's like common in other places too, like Belize and stuff. And even with we did once a satellite tag on a Caribbean reef. We know that they go down that deep. And we also found some hammerheads, tiger sharks. So it's really been really interesting so far.
Cool, and all of this can inform, I guess, like you were saying earlier. Can inform decisions on what you protect, right? And what protected areas you create. In terms of, I know deep sea mining, I do know that that's a thing, but you could protect those parts and say, no, don't touch our stuff. This is ours. This is important. This is fundamental to the life in the ocean. So that's what it's kind of going towards, protected areas?
It may. It's just not at the moment finding out and assessing the deep environment, because nobody has looked that deep yet.
Okay, cool.
So it's even looking at what kind of coral species do we have down there, what kind of sponges, if any, who knows?
Right.
So on the 2,000 meter ones, we haven't seen any coral or any sponges, I believe. It was just plain seabed and sandy, muddy seabed. But we may find some kind of mountain or with some life on it, or even hydrothermic vents. Like you don't know, right? So it's just to finding out what's down there, the biodiversity, and then we can make an informed decision whether any conservation plans need to be drafted in terms of marine protected areas or just specific species protection. This is really just to find out information then to make informed decisions.
I love that. And it's a 2-year project.
It is a 2-year project. So those 160 drops and those 80 drops and all that stuff, that's over 2 years, yes.
That's awesome.
And we are trying to get all year round data because obviously the ocean changes throughout the season.
Right, of course.
So there may be some seasonality down there. We just don't know. So we are trying to cover all the bases that we can, where we have the power to, make decisions and then see what's down there and then take it from there, kind of.
Well, that is so, so cool. Okay, well, we're going to have to get an update in like 2 years if we're still kicking around here. Yes. We're going to have to get an update. But until then, thank you so much for talking to me about this. Your passion comes through so heavily, and I hope that other people will hear it and maybe get passionate and involved as well, because you can't really have enough, right? You can't have enough support. Is there anything you'd like to say before the end, or is there any way people can follow this? I know we can follow the DOE on Instagram and kind of see updates. Follow you on Instagram. I don't know, do you post updates? Is that...
I do sometimes, because I like to share what I do. I mean, I have lots of students following me that are into marine biology, and I get questions all the time. So I'm trying to inspire them to keep going, because university can be really tough sometimes, and especially if you're not there yet, and trying to hold on and just say, this is also out there. And I think even for other people, for my friends and family, it's just nice to do that part of outreach.
Yes,
because
important.
Sometimes when you're in your circle, for me it's normal. All this information is old news,
it's kind of.
It's my life. But then when I go home to Germany, where I grew up in a small little village, they have never heard of shark finning before. And I'm like,
what?
Okay, that's like, it's just interesting to see when you're outside of your circle what the where the basic information baseline is.
Getting out there.
Yeah, what's out there. So I think one of my passions is outreach.
Yeah.
To share, because what is it worth if I know? Yeah. Everyone else needs to know. Yeah. And I love sharing it, and I love inspiring people. I love when I see that they think about it and they see, and then the change of mindset. And so like important. I said, I always say the public perception of sharks is still quite negative sometimes, and that is the biggest challenge of my field. So the more outreach, the better, and the more they understand how we survey them, and they may be fascinated by it, the more then they will identify with it, and the more they understand, and if you understand, you may start loving it. So that's my hope. And all I want to say was thank you for your interest in having me.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Of course, I think there's tons of people that are interested in this, to be honest, and that they don't know, research, sometimes Googling is just overwhelming, and sometimes you just need to sit down and listen to a podcast and get inspired. So thank you so much for talking to me. I will put your Instagram in the show notes of today's episode. I'll also link some other sharky bits and bobs down there.
And the DOE.
And I'm going to link the DOE and I'm going to link the sharky bits and bobs from the DOE. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella.
I'll see you later. Good luck.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Johanna, for chatting with me today about our favorite ocean friends and about the deep blue sea. We wish you all the best with the results of your PhD, but we know you're going to smash it. As you've heard, sharks are a vital part of our oceans here and everywhere around the world. If you see anything suspicious, make sure you call the DOE Enforcement Officer at 916-4271. That's 916-4271. If you want to know more about sharks or the Deep Sea Project, you can check out the show notes of today's episode, and make sure to follow the Department of Environment and Johanna on Instagram at doe.ky and at Johanna Kohler. Until next time, you can follow us on Instagram at protectingparadiseky or email us at protectingparadise@gmail.com. And remember, you can't care if you don't know. So toodles! Script by Bella Rooney, music and sound by James Brake.